But now what I see, and what I've spoken of for all of the years I've been doing this show, is this coming to the truth, coming to the understanding that science and spirituality are not mutually exclusive, but in fact work together. And as more research is done, as the mysteries of quantum physics unfold, scientists are finding themselves more and more, at least scientists who are on the cutting edge of these things, are finding themselves more and more in the mystical realm, in the role of mystics, if you will. Now, this is not to say that most of science, still, traditional science, pulls away from this. But there's more and more acceptance, grudging though it may be. And as I say, just as with anything, this is a process of discovery, so not going to happen overnight, but I believe that it is happening. The rise of the mystic scientist is at hand, if you will. But as I said, this all has to do with consciousness. And I came across this little story that really kind of encapsulates it very well to me. Because when I talk about the idea of the fallacy of spirituality and science being at odds or mutually exclusive, it's the flip side of what I always say on the show, which is the fact that religion and spirituality are not the same thing, that in fact they often work at cross purposes. Religion is an institution, a set of rules to help at the highest level, to try to help people understand the unknowable. But in creating its institution, it, just by doing that and setting rules of engagement with the divine, if you will, it effectively disconnects itself. And the very meaning of religion is about connection. Religio, in the Latin, means relinking. The idea of religion was the idea that we reconnect to the divine. That's the idea of religion. But what religion has evolved into, in the form of traditional institutions, is something quite different. I don't think I have to explain that much further. So this comes from the Unitarian Universalist website, and it's this wonderful little story, The Mystic and the Scientist. And it goes, one day a religious man approached a mystic and asked, "Does God exist?" The mystic replied, "Allow me to go within for an answer." And after meditating for quite some time, and expanding her heart consciousness to embrace the totality of existence, she answered, "I do not know what you mean by the word God, but I do know that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. I know that you and I are part of something so much larger than our own lives. Perhaps this is what you seek, this something larger." So then the religious man approached a scientist and he asked the same question, "Does God exist?" "Let me think," the scientist replied. And so he thought. He thought about the vastness of the universe, 156 billion light years, or something like 936 billion trillion miles in diameter, and the almost immeasurable smallness of a quark. He thought of how the energy of the Big Bang fuels the beating of her own heart, and then she answered, "I do not know what you mean by the word God, but I do know that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. I know that you and I are part of something so much larger than our own lives. Perhaps this something larger is what you think, or is what you seek. The religious man then thought to himself. He thought of what he knows and what he does not know. He thought about how he knows what he knows and how he knows he doesn't know what he doesn't know. He thought about his experience of the world and how it is but one tiny, infinitesimal fraction of all experience. He thought about his dependence on forces larger than himself, and he thought about the interdependence of all existence. He experienced wonder and pondered mystery. And then he knew in his soul, the truth of what the mystic and the scientist said, that he is part of something so much larger than his own life. And then, only then, did he think about what he'd call it. So I love that story. I think it really encapsulates the truth of these two ways of telling the same story, as Joseph Campbell used to talk about. And it would be great if scientists actually did, or were as honest as the scientist in this story about the world being more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. But unfortunately, with traditional science, as in traditional religions, often people get attached to or even concretized into particular ways of doing things that might not be valid or helpful anymore. In science, this is going on very, very pointedly. The field of quantum physics and the discovery of what they call the God particle. I mean, this has been verified now. It's verified science, thanks to the work in Switzerland on the Large Hadron Collider. We now know that there's this mysterious force in the universe that connects everything. Quantum physics has shown that we, just through our consciousness, create what happens around us. And that what is observed is very much affected by the observer. Well, the truth of that, which has been proven, absolutely completely throws the scientific method out the window, because the scientific method is based on the premise of objective observation. That such a thing is even possible. And what's been proven is that it isn't. And yet, there have been no even attempts to address that, the truth of that, and change scientific approaches. In many instances, they're using the same method that they've used for centuries, that where you get to experimentations and results, and so proclamations are made that this causes this, that causes that, and then it all changes. Which is why we hear conflicting reports. Remember years ago eggs were terrible for you. Now eggs are considered to be very good for you. That's just a minor idea, but I think you understand what I mean. But this idea of consciousness, there's still only a handful of scientists that are looking into this. There's more than there have been before, thankfully. But if you go, I would challenge you just to go do this, to see the truth of what I'm telling you here. If you do a search, like a web search, go to Google or whatever, and just type in consciousness research or consciousness researchers and see what comes up, you won't find anything connected with scientific research or scientists. You'll find a lot of websites. You'll find, the sort of maverick or unusual doctor or philosopher or mystic talking about these things. But you would expect, considering the fact that we just don't know what consciousness is, that you would have all kinds of research going on about it. And this is not the case. This is not the case at all. For such a mysterious topic that seems to underpin everything, most of science seems to remain profoundly incurious about it, which really amazes me. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the book I told you about by Michael Pollan, and we're going to talk about, if we have enough time, two scientists that really have done explorations in consciousness. There have been others too. Years ago, when I was doing this show, we did a series called Heroes of Consciousness that talked about scientists who did take on this topic. But anyway, perhaps we'll recap that in episodes to come. But right now, we're going to talk about, in talking about the use of psychedelics in research now, one has to talk about Albert Hofmann, who was the Swiss chemist who in 1943 accidentally found that he discovered the psychoactive molecule that came to be known as LSD, lysergic acid. And that opened the doors of perception, to quote Aldous Huxley. So what Michael Pollan is talking about in his book is the resurgence of the use of these chemicals in research to help people with everything from depression to addiction, and how it all comes down to a change in consciousness. And he mentions that perhaps the beginning of this resurgence was in 2006 in January, when this Mr. Hofmann was celebrating his 100th birthday, and there was a symposium, a 3-day symposium in celebration of it, and many people were in attendance. It was a 2,000 people packed the hall at the Basel Congress Center. And they rose to applaud as this stooped man in a dark suit and a necktie barely 5 feet tall, crossed the stage and took his seat. There were 200 journalists from around the world, along with more than 1,000 healers, seekers, mystics, psychiatrists, pharmacologists, consciousness researchers, and neuroscientists. Now, can you imagine a room in which all of these people would be sitting next to each other? Because if we had more of that, imagine the discoveries we could make. Imagine the things we could make happen. Imagine the understanding that we could come to if all of those people got together more often in one room. So this Congress Center in Basel, which is in Switzerland, was filled with these people, and many of their lives have been profoundly altered by the remarkable molecule that he had discovered. And one Swiss poet and physician, Walter Vogt, called his discovery of this molecule, the only joyous invention of the 20th century.